The Tonight Show interview was supposed to be about Sarah Kim's work with homeless advocacy organizations. She'd come to discuss her nonprofit and the programs she'd created to help families in crisis. But when Jimmy asked what inspired her passion for helping desperate mothers, something broke open in her carefully composed expression. Sarah sat in the blue chair, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the armrests. She'd spent years building a reputation as a fierce advocate for children's rights. Tonight, she was about to reveal the truth that had driven every sleepless night of her advocacy work. "You know, Jimmy," she began, her voice barely steady, "everyone thinks I help desperate families because I understand poverty. But the real reason is that I need to atone for the worst thing I've ever done in my life." Jimmy leaned forward, immediately sensing this wasn't going to be another inspirational nonprofit story. His experience had taught him to recognize when someone was carrying unbearable guilt. "What happened that you need to atone for?" he asked gently. Sarah took a shaky breath, her entire body tensing with the weight of 15 years of secrecy. "I sold my daughter," she said simply. "Not for adoption, I literally sold her for money when she was 6 years old." The studio audience fell into complete silence, the kind of quiet that happens when people hear something that shocks them to their core. The camera stayed focused on Sarah's face as tears began streaming down her cheeks. "Everyone thinks Emma was adopted legally by a loving family, but that's not what happened. This was in 2008, Sarah continued, her voice growing steadier as she forced herself to speak the truth. "I was a single mother, unemployed for 8 months, facing eviction. Emma and I hadn't eaten a real meal in 3 days." Jimmy's expression showed deep concern mixed with confusion. "How does someone sell their child?" he asked carefully. "Desperation," Sarah replied immediately, her voice cracking. "When you're watching your 6-year-old ask why there's no food in the refrigerator for the 4th day in a row, you start considering options you never thought possible." She paused, wiping her eyes with shaking hands. "I found them through someone who knew someone, a wealthy couple who couldn't have children but couldn't qualify for traditional adoption. They were willing to pay for a private arrangement. They offered $50,000, Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "to a woman who was 3 weeks away from homelessness, who was stealing food from grocery stores to feed her child. $50,000 felt like salvation." The camera caught the pain in her expression as she relived the worst decision of her life. "I convinced myself I was doing what was best for Emma, that she'd have a better life with people who could give her everything I couldn't." Jimmy moved from behind his desk to sit closer to her, understanding the magnitude of her confession. "How did the transaction actually happen?" he asked gently. "We met in a lawyer's office," Sarah explained, tears flowing freely now. "They had papers drawn up to make it look like a legal private adoption, but underneath all the legal language, it was a sale. Emma thought we were going to visit some nice people who wanted to meet her," she continued, her voice breaking completely. "I told her it was like a play date. I never told her she wasn't coming home with me." The studio was completely silent, except for the soft sounds of people in the audience getting emotional. "What did you tell Emma that day?" Jimmy asked. "I hugged her and told her to be good, that these people were going to take care of her now," Sarah said, her whole body shaking with sobs. "She asked when I was coming back, and I said soon because I couldn't break her heart by telling her the truth. That was 15 years ago," she added, looking directly at Jimmy. "She's 21 now, graduated from college, believes she was adopted because her birth mother couldn't care for her. She has no idea I sold her." Jimmy reached over and squeezed her hand. "Have you had any contact with her since then?" he asked. "I follow her social media from fake accounts," Sarah admitted, fresh tears forming. "She looks happy, accomplished, loved. Her adoptive parents gave her everything I promised myself they would. But seeing her success doesn't make what I did any less wrong. The money ran out in 6 months," she continued, anger at herself evident in her voice. 6 months of rent and food and utilities, and then I was right back where I started. Except now I was broke and I'd sold my child." Jimmy's own eyes were beginning to water. "How has this affected your life since then?" he asked. "I've spent 15 years trying to save other children to make up for the one I failed to protect," Sarah said firmly. "Every family I help, every child I keep from entering the system illegally, it's me trying to earn forgiveness I'll never deserve. I became an advocate because I knew exactly how these criminal networks operate," she continued. "I understood the desperation that makes mothers vulnerable to people who prey on poverty, but working with children also tortures me daily," she admitted, her voice growing quieter. "Every 6-year-old girl I see reminds me of Emma. Every mother I counsel about keeping her family together reminds me that I didn't fight hard enough." Jimmy turned to address the camera. Sarah's story is heartbreaking, but it sheds light on how desperation can lead to unthinkable choices. The thing is, Sarah added, finding her voice as someone who'd lived with unbearable guilt, child trafficking isn't just kidnapping in strangers. Sometimes it's desperate mothers making impossible choices with no real support system. She looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this and you're a mother facing impossible circumstances, please reach out to legitimate organizations before you consider anything that feels wrong. There are people who will help without asking you to sacrifice your children. And if you're judging me right now, she continued with fierce determination, please remember that poverty can push people to do things they never imagined. Judge the systems that fail families, not just the families that break under pressure. Jimmy wiped his own eyes, clearly moved by her honesty. Do you plan to ever tell Emma the truth? He asked. I think about it every day, Sarah replied honestly. She deserves to know the truth about her origins. But I also fear that knowing she was sold, rather than lovingly placed, will destroy the security she's built. I've written her dozens of letters I'll never send, she continued, trying to explain why I did what I did, how sorry I am, how proud I am of who she's become despite my failure. Jimmy stood up and helped Sarah to her feet. Sarah Kim, everyone, he announced. Someone brave enough to share the most painful truth imaginable to help protect other children. The audience rose in subdued applause, understanding they'd witnessed something profound rather than entertaining. This was recognition of courage, confession, and the complex reality of poverty and motherhood. As the show ended, Jimmy kept his arm around Sarah's shoulders. Thank you for sharing something so personal and painful, he whispered. You just opened a conversation about child trafficking that needed to happen. 4 months later, Sarah's testimony led to federal investigations of several illegal adoption networks. Her willingness to expose her own crime helped authorities shut down organizations exploiting desperate mothers. The interview segment sparked national conversations about poverty, child welfare, and the underground markets that prey on family desperation. Social services organizations reported increased funding and support after Sarah's appearance. Sarah received thousands of messages from mothers who said her story prevented them from making similar desperate choices. Several revealed they'd been approached by similar illegal networks, inspired by her confession to seek legitimate help instead. Law enforcement agencies consulted with Sarah to understand how trafficking networks recruit desperate mothers. Her insights helped develop new prevention strategies and support systems for vulnerable families. Jimmy featured child welfare experts and poverty advocates regularly on his show after that interview, using Sarah's story to highlight systemic failures that push families to desperate choices. Today, Sarah continues her advocacy work while cooperating with authorities to identify and shut down illegal adoption networks. Her confession became a powerful tool for protecting other children. The mother who sold her child to save her from poverty became the advocate who saves other children from being sold. Sometimes our greatest failures become the foundation for our most important work. Her nonprofit now specifically targets the vulnerabilities she once experienced, providing emergency support to mothers before desperation leads to irreversible choices. The $50,000 that couldn't save her family became the catalyst for laws and systems that have saved thousands of others. Because sometimes the most powerful advocacy comes from those who understand both sides of an impossible choice.